Hello and welcome to the What's for Dinner show. My name's Lynn and my aim, along with my guests, is to explore how our food experiences have influenced our lives as well as our waistlines. I'm also joined on the show by Michael O'Halloran for our regular feature, The Nugget of Knowledge, where we focus on a particular food topic. It could be a deep dive into a particular item of food, a trawl through the latest food news, or a discussion about a food trend. Make sure you listen to Nugget of Knowledge in this episode because there's a great money-saving offer that you can take advantage of. But before we get to that, who's my guest this episode? Well, without a doubt, if you want a laugh in this corner of the country, the person you ask is Trish Caller. She is responsible for bringing big comedy names to Somerset. Despite the county's shortage of high-capacity venues, it must be her charm, her imagination and her dedication that combine to persuade some of the UK's comedy greats to visit us in Somerset to amuse us with their comedy genius. So, welcome to the show, Trish. How did you end up with the likes of Russell Howard and Tom Allen on your books?
Oh, blimey. It's taken a long time. I've been in business now for around about 9 years. It all started back with a total nervous breakdown, actually, in 2012 when my poor mum passed away. Up until that point, I've been working for almost 20 years in the Ministry of Defence. So I had this breakdown and it was very horrible. But from it, I learned mindfulness meditation. So I did a couple of long courses on that and really embraced it and gave my all to learning about mindfulness, and it completely fixed me. It's something in my toolkit that keeps me mentally balanced all the time now, and it gave me the confidence to walk away from a very well paid job and start my own business in stand-up comedy, because I really wanted to do something that I loved and that everybody else would love and would bring joy and happiness to everybody.
So, what was it about mindfulness that motivated you to make such a change?
It's all about living in the present with mindfulness and choosing things that do make you happy. Because when you as an individual are happy, then you're easier to live with, easier to work with, and you make better decisions on things that are going to enhance and enrich your life. And actually, I never felt that I was worthy of the time to fix myself. But as soon as I learned that by my fixing myself, I was helping other people, my husband, colleagues, friends, family, then I just gave it my all. And, I'm a completely different person to what I was 12 years ago, for sure. If I'd been 10 years younger and the children were still reliant on us for, lots of financial outlay, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So the timing of it was critical and perfect for me to take that step.
And of course, what you've done has brought a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure to people in the Somerset area.
I love watching my audience when the show is on. I knew of a few people in an audience a few years ago that were going through some incredible hard times with relationships, but to watch them just clutch their tummy and laugh their heads off with tears of joy running down their face, and just for those few moments they weren't in that horrible place, they were in a happy place, and it just made me feel brilliant to be able to help people to feel that way for that time.
Of course, what I really want to know, Trish, is whether you've got any juicy insights into the foodie habits of any of the guests that you have on your books. I don't know if riders are a thing in the comedy industry, are they?
Only when you reach a certain level, pegging on the comedy ladder, then you can get lists of things that they want, water at a certain temperature, a certain make of beer or tea, sandwiches and all this sort of thing. But when I have that level of shows, I'm normally dealing with a venue that are well used to doing that sort of thing. So I just let them have the rider and they manage all that. My own comedians, my circuit comedians, who are, I feel are really good friends now after 10 years, they'll rock up at one of my theatres with fish and chips. I've always got food and drink in a dressing room for people and tea and coffee and stuff. I always make sure they're fed and watered. But no, there's no two the same. Gary Delaney, bless his heart, he's married to Sarah Millican, wonderful comedian, he orders an Indian when he comes down and stinks the dressing room out, bless his heart. But apart from that, not really. Most of them grab food on the way home. They're obviously quite nervous sometimes before they go on the stage, so they quite often meet up at motorway service stations all across the UK. We've got on a any weekend, and certainly sort of Thursdays as well. The comedians are driving from London, Brighton, Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle, Scotland, Cornwall, Devon, all over, and they're going to different parts of the country. And quite often I hear stories a few days later about 2 or 3 comedians that met up on the M1 or something.
I read on your website that your ambition is to make Somerset the Edinburgh of the South, which sounds fantastic. But I am wondering whether there are developments you'd like to see in the county that would help you realise that goal.
Yes, definitely. And I think the new Unitary Council will certainly help with that. It's going to make it much easier to get around the county and access theatres that I haven't used before. When I say the Edinburgh of the South, I don't mean for just 1 month of the year, which is what the real Edinburgh Festival is all about, but all year round. I want the big acts coming down here. Previous to me being in business in Somerset, for the bigger names, they usually came down as far as Bristol, and then they nipped down to Plymouth, and they very rarely stopped in Somerset. So I've definitely made a change to that, and they are coming down in their droves now. I had the delight of hosting Bill Bailey before the pandemic in 2019, I think, but we had to use the cowshed at the Bath and West Showground for that show, but actually seated 3,000 people over 2 nights and was completely sold out. So there is an appetite for the comedy to come. And what's always broken my heart previously is going to the Bristol, the Exeter, the Devon, and seeing so many people from my own community. So all having to travel, pay petrol, eat and drink and stay over in some cases. And it just got me thinking about the amount of money people were spending in other economies. And I basically wanted the acts to come here so that our residents don't need to travel, and actually our own economy is boosted by people spending the money here, plus any visitors from outside that we are able to attract to come to Taunton and Somerset as well. That's the whole aim of what I want to do. That's what I mean by making Somerset the Edinburgh of the South, and it is working. I've got a dream that has, I've spoken about it for 9 years now, of a bigger venue for Taunton, but the plans just aren't ripe enough just yet for that to happen. So I use Wellsprings in Taunton, which can seat about 870 odd, and that's really great. But at the end of the day, it's a sports centre. It's not a proper venue, with plush seats and all that sort of thing. I book for very many theatres across Somerset, where going out for the evening is a real experience for the act and for the audience. So I think Taunton as a county town should have one, and the council are being so supportive and helping so much with my stuff and all the other cultural and artistic creative people locally to just really do our best. And arts and culture is going to be a very important thread through the new Unitary Council as well. They're putting a lot of effort into arts and culture.
Well, that's great to hear, Trish, because I think a few years back there was a worry that Somerset was completely stopping investing in the arts and culture of the county, particularly around the time when the Brewhouse Theatre had to close.
It is. It's very important. I campaigned with a load of people to bring the Brewhouse back. I mean, it seemed incredible that Taunton didn't have its own theatre for the time, but that's actually when I first started. My husband and I started travelling up to Bristol 2 or 3 times a month to a place called the Comedy Box to watch comedy. So it was at that point that I was on a charity fundraiser at the Hydrographic Office, and we wanted to really raise a lot of money that year. So I thought about putting on a comedy night, never having any experience in doing anything like it before. And I was helped by a hero in the comedy industry called Jeff, and he helped me out with getting Milton Jones, and Taunton School offered me 1,000-seater marquee free of charge. And that all happened so quickly that we were able to fill that and then raise so much money for Freewheelers charity that year. So it was the lack of culture that made me really get on and try and do my best to bring it here.
As promised, I'm going to give a shout out to a few people who've shared my social media posts and my episodes. So here goes. Thank you to Kerry Sowles, Chris Capel, Gemma Dobson, B. Syed and Laura Thompson. Thanks a lot, guys.
My mum, God rest her soul, Mary, was this fiery, hilarious little Irish lady. So we ate a lot of soup. Mum could put anything in pastry, so we had a lot of pies. But one of the best things we ever had was, have you ever heard of a dish called colcannon, which is mashed potatoes with spring onions chopped up in it? And we used to have that with boiled bacon and normally like a white sauce or a cheese sauce on it, and we had that quite a lot. And mum worked in a fish and chip shop in town called the Plaza Fish and Chip Shop on Station Road, so quite often she'd bring fish and chips home from work as well, but that was as close as we got to takeaways. And normally with cabbage, my mum and all of my Irish relatives, lived off cabbage. I never liked it as a child, but I'm okay now. My mum, God rest her soul again, on our Sunday roast, she quite often used to put the vegetables on to boil at the same time as she put the meat in the oven. So the vegetables were always like really overcooked, and it was almost dangerous to sieve them in case they all shot through the holes. But she was a good cook, and she could do lovely party cooking for birthdays and special celebrations and everything. Mum was always in the kitchen. It was just the way it was when I was growing up. Really, she was amazing. I think Dad, the only thing he ever cooked was sausage and mash and baked beans. That was probably all he could do. Although on holiday we used to go to caravans in Cornwall, and me and him or my other siblings would go out with him and pick mushrooms in the morning, and then go back to the caravan and cook a cooked breakfast, so sausage, bacon, eggs, and with these beautiful mushrooms that had just been picked from the ground. Dad was really good at that, and he was really good at barbecues. I think boys and men are the kings of the barbecue. I remember one party. She'd kill me for saying this. She had 4 or 5 friends over, and they were all drinking, cider and wine. And I think at the time it was things like Dubonnet and Cinzano and all this sort of thing. And I was only about 7 or 8 years old, and I was told to stay upstairs, as was my sister and brother, and stay out of the way. And I remember sneaking down and going in, crawling behind the sofa and putting my arm through and nicking drinks. And people would go down and pick their drink up and go, "Oh, where's that gone?" And I was crawling behind the chairs helping myself. But I was violently sick at the end of the night, so I didn't do that again. I was always naughty, though. I was always the naughty one growing up. We always do a menu on a Thursday. My husband and I sit down with the cookbooks on a Thursday, not for very long, maybe half an hour or so, and we work out who's out. And my job means that I'm out a lot, so sometimes I have to have what he's had a little later if I'm not able to be home in time, and vice versa. He might be going to sport or something and I have something different, but we do look at my diary and his diary and then work out what we're going to have so that we balance everything out. So we're not having chips every day, and we make sure that we have lots of different vegetables and salad, always salad once a week. Now, I'm 58 years old and I hated salad for most of my life, but I really quite enjoy it now. So we just do this and we go through recipe books. Have you heard of a recipe books called The Pinch of Nom?
I have, yes.
Well, we love them. We've got all of them, and everything's cooked from scratch. So there's no packets or tins or anything in there. Or it's all herbs and spices and stocks and cooking things properly. And we've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years now, and we really enjoy it. And it also means if you're doing your menu, you can do your shopping list at the same time. So you've always got in what you need, but you're not tempted to buy things that are going to go off. So it's a really good way of being economical with food and shopping and stuff as well. And everyone's under the cosh with money and stuff, so we just try to be careful, really. And I like actually to know everything that's in my food. When you buy something from a tin or a packet, you don't know what kind of additives and numbers and things are being added to it. So cooking from scratch as often as you can is giving you a good chance of having a healthy diet, I think. But I must admit, my husband does the mammoth share of the cooking. My husband is ex-Navy. Being in the services, he's practically good at everything. Cooking, cleaning, ironing, shopping. He's just wonderful. He's a lovely chap, and again, I don't take that for granted. I do feel incredibly blessed to have what we've got. He gets really carried away now with all these new spices that we've never heard of, and we have to go hunting down where we can get them from. But I do cook for dinner parties if we've got people coming round. But again, Al is such a love. He'll chop everything up for me, so I'm like a TV chef. I've got everything chopped up, and all I got to do is chuck it in a pan. Risotto is my pièce de résistance. I do a brilliant chicken and wild mushroom risotto, which we have probably once a month at least. I would have thought. Love it. But I normally do it with a glass of wine. So for one spoon of stock that goes in, I have a sip of wine, and by the time dinner's served, I'm usually quite squiffy.
I was going to say. If you're enjoying the show so far, don't forget there's more episodes available. Last time round, my guest was Detective Constable Helen Taylor, and we talked about her 3 years living in the Falkland Islands, which included surviving the COVID pandemic from this remote outpost, and how working shifts as a police officer in North London affected her diet.
I'm just a stereotypical detective. I do have a sort of like drawer full of snacks, so just because you never know where you're going to have to work through the night, and there's nothing worse than not having any snacks about if you're stuck at the station, so yeah, I've learned that.
In the Nugget of Knowledge, Michael and I taste test a pasta dish from Nonatonda, which is a home delivery service. Listen in and see how we felt about that. So, Trish, do you have any food habits that you might want to keep secret, but actually you're prepared to tell us about?
Do you know what? I'm very willing to tell you, because if it helps anybody else, then I'm very happy to do it. My old habits, when I was younger and up until about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I didn't eat very well. All the stuff I'm talking about now is very recent. I used to eat rubbish and quickly. I was very, very overweight all of my adult life, and I really regret all of that. I've ended up with type 2 diabetes, which I've had for about 8 years now. So since then, and since learning mindfulness now, I always eat mindfully. So I eat slowly. I enjoy everything I eat. I don't disallow myself anything, because the minute anyone tells me you can't have such and such, I crave it. So I don't disallow myself anything, but I really enjoy it and eat it slowly. And for the first time in my life, I get that signal now that says you're full. And I never had that before. I used to eat way past that, and overeat incredibly. So it's all, to me now, it's all about eating mindfully and enjoying every mouthful that I do. And I've lost about 4.5 stone in the last 2 or 3 years through eating that way. I'm not on a diet. When I bump into people I haven't seen for a while, they go, "Oh my God, you look amazing. You've lost so much weight." And the first thing I say to them is, I'm not on a diet, because I've done diets before. I've lost 7-8 stone on Slimming World over the years, but I've always been a yo-yo dieter, where my weight would go down. I'd lose 7 and put on 8 over the next year. I personally don't think that diets work. I think changing your whole mindset to food and the way you eat and the way you prepare and what you eat is way more important than that. Sorry to anybody who's going Slimming World and Weight Watchers online, but it doesn't work for me. Not in the long term. I think it's changing your mindset and your relationship with food is way more important.
Yes, it sounds to me as if you've made a decision to take full responsibility for what you eat and how you eat, and that's fundamentally changed your relationship with food.
Yeah, 100%. Like I say, my weight has gone up and down, and it had a big effect on me. Like I say, I did have a breakdown 10 or 11 years ago. Feeling sad about your body image is awful, and I've had that practically all my adult life, and I'm still overweight now, but I'm much better than I was, and I'm always going in the right direction. But since learning mindfulness, I've learned to accept, do my best, and learn to try and love every inch and every ounce of me as I am, and just be more accepting of everything. So I would love to be able to pass that on to other people. You look at yourself and you think, oh, I'm fat, or I've got a fat bum or fat tummy or something. Believe me, you probably haven't. And if you look back in 10 years' time, you'll think, what the heck was I worrying about? I wasn't that bad. But I do think you've hit the nail on the head there, that taking personal responsibility is the key.
Are there any foods that you eat now that you never would have considered before? I know you mentioned that you've learned to embrace salads, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that is a new taste for you.
I ate my first avocado in my 50s, and I love squished avocado now with poached eggs. Salads to me these days are just a joy. I never ate couscous before. Yeah, so lots of things are new in my taste for that, and we both enjoy doing that as well, eating those.
And that must be such a pleasure to be discovering new tastes and new foods and new ways of combining foods and cooking.
Well, the pinching on books help you with that as well. They know the things that go together, for taste and for nutritional value as well, because they are basically calorie counted recipe books as well. I've been going to Edinburgh for 8 years now, 8 or 9 years, and this was the first one back this year since COVID. But I just couldn't wait to get back up there. But you do end up being incredibly busy and running from one side of Edinburgh to the other, to see as many shows as you can. But I was determined to look after my body while I was up there, because previously I've not eaten enough, I've drunk too much, and just felt really really ill. Basically, if I eat rubbish, I feel rubbish. So I always make sure I have a nice breakfast. I always carry bananas in my bag so I can munch on them and get some energy. Baked potatoes, an awful lot of street food in Edinburgh. Everything, kebabs and fish and ricey things. Honestly, the types of food up there were absolutely incredible. One place I will mention, though, I don't know if you've ever heard of a business called Pie Master. Everyone goes to Pie Master in Edinburgh, and it is basically anything you want in a pie, right down to a macaroni cheese. And I was invited to lots of parties where there was an awful lot of really nice nibbly food in the evening, just to line your tummy and things. But I didn't actually go to many restaurants because I was on my own. But practically as soon as I sat down in a cafe, I'd see someone that I know, and they'd come and have a chat and everything. So it was all very lovely, and I do love Edinburgh.
So, after your visit to Edinburgh, Trish, I expect you've got a packed diary. Are there any events coming up in the Somerset area that you want to tell us about?
Well, I've got a list of about 30 shows in front of me, but they go right up to the end of next year. One of the things, on the 7th of October, we've got an incredible show at Wookey Hole Caves. It's not actually in the caves, but it's in a big room to the side of it. But they really know how to put on a good comedy night there. We've got Flo and Joan at the Macmillan Theatre, comedy sisters. I book all the comedy into the Macmillan Theatre. It's one of my favourite places on the planet. Coming up there, we've got Tom Stade, Harriet Kelmsley, Glenn Moore, Justin Morehouse, Simon Brokin, Chris McCausland, Hal Cruttenden. These are a list of names that most people should recognise from the TV and Live at the Apollo and that sort of thing. I run a bi-monthly Taunton Comedy Club at the Creative Innovation Centre in Taunton. That's a full lineup of MC, opening act, middle act, and really, really great headliners I'm managing to get down now. But all of the comedy nights I've got coming up are all on the website geniusprandevents.co.uk. UK. So hopefully people will find everything they need on there. And if they want to sign up to the mailing list, then they get advance notice of some of the bigger ones that I've got coming up. I potentially have a fantastic show coming up in 2023, but until the contract's signed, I'm not allowed to say who it is. But everybody will want tickets to it. Put it that way.
Oh, well, you'll have to give me the heads up on that one early.
I will, I promise. Stand Up for Cider, that's in its 9th or 10th year now. Fantastic night out. And one of our previous winners in 2017 went on to be on Britain's Got Talent afterwards. So it really is a place to see people before they get famous. We get hundreds of applications for every heat, and they come from all the corners of the UK. And everyone loves coming to Somerset now for the first time in many, many years. My audiences are fabulous. They're so supportive, and they turn up and buy tickets for everything, and they know how to behave in a comedy show, the lack of heckles and that sort of thing. And I'm just so grateful to everyone that has supported me in building up the comedy business over the years. I'm extremely grateful.
Well, I'm certain that the people of Taunton, Bridgewater, the rest of Somerset are hugely grateful to you, Trish, for what you've accomplished over the last few years.
I'm very blessed to love what I do. I just love comedy.
Well, I've got one last question for you, Trish.
Go on then.
If you could be an item of food, what sort of food would you choose?
An item of food that someone's going to eat? I'd sooner be something revolting so nobody ate me. Cheese. A nice piece of real strong cheddar. One of those ones that makes you go.
So you'd be a huge round of cheese, one of those ones that's full of flavour and full of strength.
I love my cheese.
And of course, it'd have to be genuine Somerset cheddar.
Of course.
Thank you very much, Trish. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, it's been lovely talking to you as well, Lynn. You've taken me right back into my childhood and reminded me of so many lovely memories that don't always come to the forefront. I'm very grateful that you've asked me to be a guest on here, and I've really enjoyed it.
Now it's time for Nugget of Knowledge. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael O'Halloran, partner in crime, so to speak. And for this episode, our topic is... It's a taste test from delivery company Nonatonda. So, Michael, we're taste testing the first meal that we've had delivered from fresh pasta company called Nonatonda, who we discovered at the recent Foodies Festival in Exeter. So they have delivered us a dish called bucatoni with Cornish sardines and wild fennel in a tomato pasta sauce. Give it a taste?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks great, I must say.
Does it? Go on then, tuck in. Let's see what the first mouthful brings us. Now they provided a topping to pan grattato and pine nut garnish, which replaces parmesan that we would normally have on a pasta dish. And the topping basically is breadcrumbs that are fried in olive oil until they're nice and crispy. And in this case they've got pine nuts added as well. And then once they're all crispy, you add chilli, lemon zest, salt and pepper. And it's known as a poor man's parmesan.
No, I think it's good, tastes good.
Because you were a bit worried, weren't you? Because you don't really like sardines that much.
Yeah, I'm not a major fan of sardines, but actually, this is more like it's a seafood pasta type dish.
Yeah. But you can taste the fish though.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You definitely taste the sardines.
Yeah.
They're Cornish sardines, which are they're usually fished from August to January, so we're in the right season for having those in a dish. So that's good to hear. Cornish sardines, also known as pilchards, before they were rebranded.
So what was the thinking there? Just
well, I think just to make them more popular,
right?
Yeah. Because like sardines were sort of, I guess, more
fashionable,
more acceptable. So, what kind of pasta do you think it is, Michael?
That looks pretty much like spaghetti to me.
Well, it isn't spaghetti. It's called bucatini, but it is a long pasta. You tend to use long pastas when you've got a sort of a silky-ish sauce. I mean, that it can have sort of flakes of fish or ground mince or pancetta or something like that, but something that wants to coat the pasta.
Okay.
And this bucatini is actually hollow, so if you were to take time to sort of peer at it, it's actually hollow, so the sauce will go inside, coat both the inside and the outside.
Okay.
And it's traditionally from around Rome and Naples.
So any particular reason for that?
Why they've chosen this pasta?
Yeah.
Well, I expect, obviously it's not your boring old spaghetti, so it adds texture and what they call mouthfeel or toothability. So it's just feels different in the mouth and on the tooth when you bite into it.
Right, okay.
So
Yeah, well, definitely, I know that I'm eating fresh pasta.
yeah, it was lovely. And this pasta actually is from a bronze die. You know the difference between a bronze dye pasta and a non-bronze dye pasta?
No.
Well, most pasta that we buy in the UK, America, probably almost everywhere, perhaps apart from Italy, is produced using dyes or moulds that shape the pasta that are sort of coated in Teflon. So the surface of the pasta is quite smooth, but traditional pasta and better quality pasta is made using a bronze dye. So a bronze mould, and it gives the surface of the pasta a little bit of texture and makes the pasta more porous, so it kind of holds the sauce better.
Okay.
So yeah, so I mean,
so this is bronze dye pasta.
Yeah, and you can get bronze dye pasta both fresh and dried. So it's worth looking in the supermarket for a bronze dye brand. You will pay more for it, but pasta's still relatively cheap to buy.
Right.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I still think it's
So you're not paying
worth
the
doing.
for that. So in terms of cost, like how, did we have to remortgage for this?
We've got it on an offer, and I have got an offer for any listeners who are interested in trying, which I'll talk about at the end. So we paid I think it was $11.50
for both
for both portions. Yeah, I think full price would probably be about £16.
Right. Okay.
But actually, it is really tasty.
Yeah.
And it's a pasta sauce that I probably wouldn't be bothered to make at home.
Yeah. And like if you went into a pizzeria and you ordered this, you'd be perfectly happy, wouldn't you?
You would. Yeah, absolutely you would. It's delicious. The other interesting thing I noticed because you get quite a lot of little bits of information with it, including, of course, a list of the ingredients, and it's specified that the sauce is made from San Marzano tomatoes.
Right, okay.
So I had a look at them. They are a protected designation of origin status product, which means that you can only call your tomato a San Marzano tomato if it comes from a specific region in Italy, and that region in Italy is around Naples.
So I assume it's about the flavour as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have a stronger flavour, they're a bit sweeter, I think. And actually, originally, that variety of tomatoes were grown in the volcanic soil in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. But that, I think, adds to it because the quality of the tomato sauce is excellent. So James and Rebecca, who are the owners of Nonna Tonda, they basically packed up their belongings into it says car, but romantically I'm going to say it was a camper van. And they set off with their little baby, who was 6 months old, and they spent 6 weeks travelling around Italy eating pasta.
That's a tough gig.
It's a tough gig. So they ate loads and loads of pasta. Yeah, so what a great idea. So they basically recreated and adapted the dishes that they tasted and have made this business out of it.
Very good.
So,
yeah. So I think we'll definitely try it again.
I mean, basically the way it works is you sign up and you can have either one dish delivered or 2 dishes delivered a week, or you can cancel if you don't want it in a particular week. Each week you can choose a pasta dish with a protein of fish or meat, or you can choose a veggie option.
Okay.
Yeah. But for me, based on what this tastes like, I'm well up for it. Yeah, and you know me, I like cooking my own pasta.
Yeah.
I like cooking my own pasta sauces. But
it's an opportunity to try something that you might, as you say, that you might not ordinarily cook.
Yeah. But next week, I think it's a filled pasta. So again, that's something that we wouldn't normally make.
I'm impressed. I think definitely try it again.
Chuck the pasta in the sauce,
swirl
it around.
These days in particular, I know it's like, tightening belts all around for a lot of people. So actually, you can feel as if you're having a bit of a, you could order a takeaway tonight, and it's not going to be of this quality, way. And it'll probably cost you actually more.
It probably would. It wouldn't be as healthy. What about the portion size?
No, I'm happy with the portion size, although I do think that you've got a bigger portion size than me and pushing up front.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And
no, thanks, and thanks, Nonna Tonda.
So if anyone out there's been, interested in giving this a go, what I've got is a refer a friend offer. So I'm going to post the link on the What's for Dinner Show Facebook page and also on the Instagram page. Basically, you click that link and you can get 50% off your first 4 deliveries. So that makes it even cheaper than we've been saying. And if you do that, then I get a free one. Come on, folks. Let's support this business.
Everyone's a winner.
And try it out.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Before I go, just a little reminder that if you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. You can share an episode from your podcast player or from my website, or you can easily share one of my social media posts on Instagram or Facebook. If you're kind enough to share an episode, I will give you a personal shout out on the show to say thank you. What more could you ask for? Thanks in advance for helping me spread the word about my podcast. Thank you to Rick Simmons from the Content Podcast for his help and advice, and thank you to Pixel Bay for the music.